We are here to talk about a serious topic that is dear to my heart because I have a 7-year-old and think about, how her life is going to evolve, especially with all the technology and other things at her fingertips. And this report really highlighted, some of the issues facing our youth today all over the world, where we're seeing social disconnections, loneliness, feeling isolated, prevalent in various countries, and unfortunately increasing. And hopefully we can talk today about how to address some of those issues. So Karen, I wanted to start with you as someone who, I think you have your World Happiness Summit coming up this week, so it's very apropos. But given that this report showed this upsetting and sort of disturbing evidence, you talk about a holistic approach needed to reverse these trends. What does that actually mean in practice?
Well, thank you so much, and it's a joy to be here with all of you and everyone watching online. We just had the summit actually this weekend, and as I was walking over here, what really dawned upon me is that it's really about people. We understand that, we know that, but it's really about people increasing connection. And when we're talking about our youth and the advances in technology, I think that we forget that moment for spontaneous connection. So even if you ask somebody, hey, where's the local coffee shop? Do you know if it's going to rain today? These micro moments of connection, I think that because of technology and the ease of technology, and we know so many things cognitively, we need to move that cognitive knowledge into heart knowledge, into connection with other people. And the holistic approach that I'm talking about is bringing this in education, bringing this in organizations, in trainings, in all different areas of life, because I feel like sometimes we're in silos, or in government, or in businesses, and we have these short-term gains that we want to have, and we want to see it right away. We're talking about people. We're talking about relationships. These take times, and I think our youth, I think there are two things. One is that we are disconnected because we think we're connected because of technology, but we remove these micro moments of connection. And the other thing is that we need to build resilience. So last year we had the honor of having the former Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, at our London summit, and he talked about visiting universities. And he said he went into the hall where all the students are supposed to be talking to each other, and it was packed, and it was silent. Everybody was on their phone texting each other. And then he asked them, why are you not talking to each other? And he said, and they said, we feel uncomfortable because maybe you won't want to talk to me. Or imagine, we need youth that feels okay if you say, hey, I'll get back to you, or I don't know where that is. So we need that level of resilience, but that only comes through training, which means having those moments of micro connections again and again. And in the work that we do with the summit, we promote the science, but also we give people the opportunity to connect with each other. And that's really where the magic happens. We need to talk to each other. We need to see smiles. We need to touch. We need to smell, because that is, being in tune with our biology.
So that's a great way to pivot to you, Russell, as an educator. The report also talks about how young people are underestimating their peers' empathy and how that's affecting their relationships. You wrote in The Atlantic last August about banning phones at the Georgetown Day School. My daughter just the other day asked me about when she was going to get her phone. Her dad said when you're 18, but we'll see if that actually happens. But did you have to deal with like a mutiny at your school, or was it embraced? How did the students react to that, and did you see changes in their behavior as a result?
The kids have put up a statue of me at the school to celebrate the decision. Look,
You're now a god.
Exactly. When my parents were in high school in the 1950s, they would go through the cafeteria line, and the last thing they got put on their tray was a little sample pack of cigarettes. And
What?
It was a way to build brand loyalty. And we hear that in 2025, and we say that's insane. And I bet in 25 years, people are going to say, wait, they had phones in school? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So I will tell you, I have 3 kids, 2 of whom have graduated and are in college, and my youngest is a senior. And she said to me, this summer, Dad, are you kidding me? You're going to do this right before my senior year? You're going to take the phones out of school? 2 weeks into the school year, she said to me quietly, and this was a huge admission from a 17-year-old, she said, I think it was a good decision.
Wow.
I think it's better, because what is happening is in our shared spaces, instead of everybody looking at their screens, they are pushing back past those initial moments of discomfort and then having spontaneous conversations with each other. They are playing hacky sack. They are saying, let's order a pizza. They are doing things that high school kids are supposed to do rather than retreating to the safety of technology, which we do too, right? We are in lines and we take out our phones because we don't want to risk having a conversation with somebody else in line, when all of the research tells us that conversation is actually going to have a positive impact on our well-being. So it is one intervention that schools can make, but I think it's an incredibly powerful and impactful intervention that can help kids feel less isolated, more connected, and ultimately more healthy.
Well, Gretchen, you talked about how there's not a one-size-fits-all approach, and part of understanding how to be happy and what that means for you means understanding yourself. For young people who are still figuring that out and kind of, searching for who they are, what is your advice to them in terms of discovering what happiness means to them?
Well, I think the report had all kinds of really helpful information. One is just quantity, another is quality, another is structure. To think about all of this as we're thinking about our friendships. One of the things that was really interesting is it looked at when college students made a lot of friends early upon arrival. That was a great predictor of whether they had strong relationships and a happier life as college continued. So one of the things is when you're in a new place, make a special effort, reach out for those new relationships, because it's really going to pay off over the long term. I thought another thing that was really interesting is that the structure of our relationships matters as well, and that high density relationships, which just basically means like, are you friends with the friends of your friends? Like, does everybody kind of know each other? Are you part of a group? Are you part of a team? Do you live in a hall together? Do you live in a neighborhood where you run into each other all the time? That's going to boost your happiness as well, because there tends to be a greater sense of cohesion and a sense of belonging when it's not just a bunch of people who you randomly know who don't know each other. You're actually part of a social network. But then there are differences in how people like to relate. Some people are more extroverted. Some people, find that a little bit harder. And one of the interesting things from the research was that everybody gets a little boost from social engagement, even something like talking to a store clerk or talking to somebody who has a cute dog on the sidewalk. But if you're in that mode where you need restorative solitude, you might need to give that to yourself, and you might need more than somebody else needs of that time. And yet when you are ready to make that connection, even a very small connection with somebody else, that is going to pay off. And I have to say, I think that this idea of like not being on headphones, not being on your phone, it just signals your availability. People don't want to be rude. They don't want to interrupt you. And by being available for these like micro moments, little connections, that does lead the way to deeper connections, and also just the lift that we get from connecting with other people in a very small way.
Yeah. So understanding sort of when you want to be alone and when that's actually healthy for you, and when you want to be around other people.
when you're having your 10th dinner alone and, you know, you're like, okay, I need to push myself to go out and eat around other people, or I'm going to work in the library instead of working in my room.
Karen, in terms of the conversation about loneliness and isolation that really came to the forefront during the pandemic, and what we all experienced, and especially our younger population, what have you seen about the conversation around happiness, loneliness, isolation over these last 5 years? Has the conversation changed? Have you seen any leaders, policymakers actually address these issues in a meaningful way?
Well, again, I have to cite Dr. Murthy, who made it his campaign to do that. He did bulletins as a Surgeon General, so there's a lot of work that he did to bring this to the forefront. And he actually called well-being the issue of our time. So I think that that's definitely one of them. I think that also it's incredibly important to have gatherings like this, where we bring data to the forefront. So of course the work that Gallup is doing and the World Wellbeing Movement, as well as the work with the World Happiness Report. Because the very first thing we need to do is raise awareness. If we're not aware, we're not going to make any changes. And so I think that the challenge that I'd like to give to everyone who's listening here today is, what are you going to do? Now we know that this is out there. We have a lot of evidence here. It's all over the place. It's, you know, we are at a point where our youth is not doing well. You know, it's just not. And we can fix this. It's incredibly empowering that we can actually do something about this. And there's enough data, there's trainings, there's research, there are books that can be done. And, you know, don't wait for this magic KPI. You know, our patient is bleeding out. Let's go in there and triage and build the societies that we all want to live in. And those are happier societies who are well, and our children, my God, how important are our children for the present and the future? So I think that a focus on children's well-being and youth well-being, and how decreased loneliness and increased connection, as well as everything else, will have a multiplicative positive effect for society. And guess what? They'll perform better in the metrics that we want them also. They perform better in school. They learn better. They make more money. So it's really a forward, holistic view of what our society can and should look like.
Yeah. Well, Russell, on that front, in terms of what can be done with educators, aside from sort of taking away their phones, what do you think should be done at schools? Should this be a part of the curriculum? Should this be something that, you know, if you go to school to get to want to teach later, that this should be part of something that educators learn about so they can sort of pass it on to their students? How should this play a role in the school system?
So absolutely, schools need to be thinking about the wellness of their kids, and there are a range of ways that they can do that. I want to talk about two. One is the world feels, I think, tumultuous and terrifying to many of us, right? Every day we don't know what change we are going to see, and it is easy for kids to see that anxiety on all of our faces. I think a great antidote for anxiety is agency. And when we give kids the opportunity to own solutions, to try to have a positive impact, that is actually incredibly protective and builds resilience in them. We have a student policy institute in our high school where kids learn about policy issues, they meet with different folks, and they actually then propose and sometimes implement solutions. And that is incredibly healthy for kids, so that rather than feeling like they're subject to what's happening in the world, they actually can positively engage. The second intervention that I will talk about that schools can make is around parenting. Because the world feels scary, and because parents are hearing about risks to youth mental health, I think that when we feel as adults anxious, sometimes what we will do is try to assert control. And that is actually the exact wrong instinct, that in trying to protect kids and keep them safe, we will say, you know what, stay home, it's fine, you can be on your phone, you can be on your computer, but I don't want you out in the world where something bad could happen to you. We are over-indexing the risk of what's happening in the world, and we are under-indexing the risk of being isolated and being engaged with technology. And so trusting our kids in developmentally appropriate ways to be out in the world, to be interacting, to take the bus, to take the metro, to have a job, all of these things are incredibly protective for our kids. And so as schools, how are we communicating to parents that it is okay to trust your child, it is okay to allow them to make some mistakes. In fact, it's really important, rather than trying to protect them and then building this internalized sense of their own fragility.
Yeah. Well, Gretchen, in our final moments, in talking about what we can do for our youth, you talk about how the key to happiness is relationships. What do you think can be done at a young age to kind of get them started on the right footing, so that, you know, where even if they have sort of anxious parents and they're with their phones and other things, as they grow older, they have sort of that foundation already?
Well, I think that's a great question, because while I think it's extremely important to talk about what schools and governments and organizations can do, as we've been talking about what they can do to foster these kind of relationships, part of it is for the people themselves, the young people themselves, to think about, well, this is really important. So I always remind other people and myself, when in doubt about how to spend our precious time, energy, or money, to be happier, you're always making a good decision if you spend it on relationships. So if you're thinking like, should I make the effort to go out and go to that meeting? Should I spend the money to buy the $10 ticket to go to that student show, or whatever it is? It takes time, energy, or money sometimes to build these relationships, but it is really something that does set us up for a happier life. And as mentioned, it also makes us healthier, more productive, more creative, better leaders, better team members. And so when we're thinking about how to spend our time and energy, it really is worthwhile to think about relationships. There was interesting information that when people set a goal for themselves, if it was relationship-related goals, like I want to spend more time with my friends, versus something like I want to get a better job, that gave you the bigger happiness boost, because in the end, so much of our happiness does come through our relationships.
That's great. Well, Karen mentioned a challenge. I'm going to challenge all of you the next time you are in line at a coffee shop or the grocery store, don't look at your phone and see what happened. So thank you again for your time.